Hello, man. Hello, man. There we go. We got checking everything. Hello, man. Hello, Mgtows. Hello, MRAs. Hello, whoever's watching. I don't really care. Today we're going to talk a little about horizontal hostility and what it is and everything. We've seen this. We see this all over the world, and I've first noticed it was prevalent. Something that happened within. Something that happened within feminism. Something that happened within, and we witnessed it lately again. Something that happened in the 80s in radicalized feminism. What happened was horizontal hostilities towards in-group members and everything. I often talk about group dynamics, and I'm a group dynamics major, so why wouldn't I? Within group dynamics, you have subgroups, and subgroups are important. And we can look at Mgtow, and we can look at the MRA, and we can look at the manosphere in general, and look at the three subgroups we have. We have PUA, we have MRA, and we have Mgtow. Within there falls a few subgroups with TFL, Incel. There's probably some subgroups in PUA, which I'm not really familiar with, and there's probably some subgroups in the MRA, which I'm not for. Well, there is subgroups in the MRA. There's LBGT MRA, and then there's masculinity MRA, and then there's the regular formation of MRA, and then there's female rights MRA and male rights MRA. So you can see the subgroups built, but horizontal hostilities in these groups. They develop over time, and I see them developing in Mgtow too. Well, let's take a look at Mgtow, and it's a new group of men, and based on masculinity and stuff like that. We have well, let's just take a look. We have the like kind of level oneers, level twoers, which are regular perusers of the content of Mgtow and that stuff, and we have the monk group, which is a subgroup, and we have the PUAs, which practice sort of a PUA style. We have the purple pillars, which say they're half in, half 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door, and then we have these other subgroups, which are intrusive groups into Mgtow because they see Mgtow as as having some of the answers for their problems too, and it all gets very complex, and it all gets, like in every group, and like in RadFem at that time, RadFem had to go through, and I watched it because I was kind of trolling RadFem. Yeah, I was. I was in, and I seen the whole thing develop, and I see that they went out and they got a groups dynamics person to come in to fix the problem and everything, and talk about the problem and see. Lately, I witnessed there's two other concepts of there's political horizontal hostilities, and I see this developing in the Democratic Party now, in the split or the fusion that happened between the friction that happened between the progressives and then what they call the establishment, and you see that in the parties of say. The Republican Party, which there's a split between the establishment and the new progressive, like Shapiro. Shapiro's a good example. He brings a new outlook to the Republican Party. So we can see that happening all over the groups, and we can see that happening within Mgtow. But someone has to identify these problems so we can eventually work on a cure. Within Mgtow, we see these groups often splinter off and then go after the horizontal hostilities. Become when say Sandman's group comes after what happened. Sandman's group came after the monk group, and the Dao. The Dao group now, that's just very large in Mgtow, and they come after what you call the aesthetics group, the monks, or the people that believe in the celibacy and everything, and try to keep on a virtual path, and there seems to be severs in those groups, and then there's the new group. We can talk about ageism as being a part of horizontal hostilities, and we can talk about um, a couple things. We can talk about the ageism, reverse ageism towards, you're young, you don't know, being a part of the hostilities and stuff like that. But it is all horizontal hostility, and I think it's something that needs to be cured. And of course, well, I think about these things. I've witnessed this in two spots in the last few months. I witnessed it at a hospital that I went to, and with dealing with the nurses, trying to get the codes for patient care and everything. And so my son was in the hospital, and I was trying to see what actually was going on. But I noticed a strange thing develop in front of my face, and it's one of these times in my life where I was identified as a men's rights activist. So automatically I was identified as being who I am, Traversable Mgtow. I'm a men's rights activist by some group or some person that know who I was and everything. And there's automatically a hostility towards me in that. But I noticed most of the hostility came within the group of nurses that were having to deal with issues and patient care and patient rights. And we were dealing with patient rights at that because I am who I am. I started asking questions, and I knew how to deal with this because I have dealt with this before. And I immediately said, well, I'll go see a supervisor. And that's pretty much the answer when dealing with nurses. You say, I'm going to go see a supervisor, which it invokes what I would call horizontal hostilities within the group. What the lesser nurses consider themselves the lesser nurses or the trains, when there's supposed to be this horizontal amicable thing that's happening within them. And so I kind of invoked it because I'm sort of a psyops person, and that's what I do. And then I sat back and watched the horror. and it was interesting to watch, and it gave me some concepts and that I think about now, and it gives me things to think about and read about and everything. And then one of the things I noticed was horizontal hostility was prevalent in that group. Not that I care about that, something that they have to figure out in group. I'm not part of it. I'm an out group person in this situation, but how it affects out-group people is what we talk about. Out-group people in that situation is patients' families and patients are the out-group on that, and this thing eventually affects out-groups in that situation. Now in Mgtow and the MRA, it doesn't generally affect the out-groups. In feminism, it never affected out-groups. It affects the quality of the product that you're going to put out is where it affects it. Now, I look at things when I look at things in the group dynamics way. I look at these horizontal hostilities and from a historical perspective, and I like to see how these things they grow. And if we can look at these things, we can hedge these things off before they happen within our group. We're a group that believes in activism, so we have to deal with these problems before they get out of control. And the first time we seen this was in feminism, like I said, back in 1847, and at Oberlin College, right around here that I visit often. It's Oberlin was a Carnegie College, Carnegie Medals, and then it became a gender group studies college, and there's always been this sort of rift there that's interesting to watch between the metallurgical studies and the more male technical side of things, and the feminism side of so Oberlin College became a hot point of these things. Lucy Stone was in women's suffrage. You see Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton in this movement. In the movement, what happened, they were going to all group together in these things. And then it became a vicious hostility between the rivals after a while. We see this in Mgtow a lot. So I'm using this as a reference point, so you can go back and you can look and you can learn about your gender dynamics and everything in a very structured way. And when we talk about these things, I think Mgtow should be briefed on a lot of these things. uh, because we're going to need to talk about them, what would you cohesively and knowing the language. And this is one of the languages you're going to hear: horizontal hostilities and everything. It's a form of in-group bullying from one group in group to another group, or most of the time it'll be two groups bullying one minor group, and it's pretty much mastermind by by the minority group, but most of them will not see that the minority group will lash out and then force the other groups to be hostile towards it and everything, and vice versa. And there's a carpalus triangle that I often talked about, carpalus triangle of whatever it is that play out in this. If you look at carpalus triangle, you'll see it in relationships. There's the victim, there's the rescuer, and there's the other side of it. I can't remember offhand what it is about carpalus triangle, but the victim becomes a rescuer. The rescuer becomes they change spots. And there's a very good story about carpalus triangle. And within Mgtow, it's between boyfriend, girlfriend, and out boyfriend, girlfriend, and out to liar, which is Chad male or what the female wants, and that's on an island out there, and the boyfriends ships them back and forth in that sense, and they all switch parts. But that's neither here nor there when we're talking about well, it is here nor there when we're talking about horizontal hostilities in group. I think it's something that really needs to be talked about, and in what is the cure for it is basically MGTOWs in general. They don't want to go through all the explanations and everything. They want to know what is the cure for it. And I've started talking about the sort of PC thing that's happening within MGTOW, and that's what we're doing. We're doing social justice when we start talking about these things with the incels. My last 3 videos were about the layover between social justice incel within Mgtow, and we're getting sucked into this thing, this bigger atmosphere of social justice, and we are becoming what we hate. We are becoming the people we hate. Now we see this in Democratic Party taking on sort of characteristics of their foes lately. We see where I first noticed this within the Democratic Party was they started calling Gavin McGinnis's group a bunch of soy boys and a bunch of incels is the word they use. And I said, well, that's not very PC of you guys. And then I got kicked off, and I got kicked off of Mike Malloy, and I got kicked off of one other because they didn't want to hear what I had to say about those things. You guys are becoming what you hate, and so that could be expected when a MGTOW shows up anywhere. We talk logic, and nobody wants to hear logic within those things, but. Ironically, within this thing, there's become these twists and turns, and some of it become radicalized, and some of it become assailized, and we've seen a sever a few years ago within Igmore and Mgtow, which are both the same thing, one for the black males and one for what would be perceived as white males. But Mgtow in itself is the major group, which are all inclusive of all males. That's what we always say. We're all inclusive of all males, but these mini substructures will happen. These fractions will happen. And that's a good example of how the fracture happens. And it'll go on and on and on and on, and we see there's really a problem with the LBG sort of presence in Mgtow, and the incel presence in Mgtow, and the TFL presence in Mgtow, and like I went through the 7 steps of basically how to 5, 6 steps of how an incel would just become a Mgtow, and then or become what he wants, a wounded male, and then become the Mgtow, and then he become a monk. But we do see this now, and we see this with with groups right now lashing out against other Mgtow groups, and then there becomes a split in there, and it becomes hostility within the group. And instead of doing what you're supposed to be doing within the group and focusing on the outgroups are the people that we're trying to collect and bring them into our in-group, and that's always the process that's supposed to be going on here in Mgtow. But sometimes we get sidetracked, and those sidetracked things is one of the biggest diversions that it becomes a problem, because being sidetracked and being undermined would lead to what we recently had happen with the alt-right and the basics splinter from why did Ibmore leave? And you have to ask these questions. Why did Ibmore feel they needed to splinter from Mgtow? And I think that was because of an even stronger presence was coming in of alt-right Mgtows, which utilitarian Mgtows, and there was a what would you say? Just a there was a there was a split in ideology in these two groups. So yes, one group is going to sever and one group is going to stay, and that's common within it's common within it. There's a common healthy way within group dynamics to achieve these things. Groups norms, they norm, groups come in. We went through a norming process in Mgtow, and groups form within that. Subgroups form, and then that gives each subgroup a task. You norm, you form, and you storm, and then this group storms whatever topic, or in a business, groups will storm the market. And what is the market for Mgtow? The market for Mgtow is all those blue pill males out there that are unenlightened and falling down the trap of religious queuing, which we call dating and marriage and those things, religious queuing. And but they norm, they form, they storm, and then they dissolve. The groups dissolve after that. There's a rhyming word in there that I can't remember offhand: norming, forming, storming, and something else. But the groups dissolve, and then they reform. Mgtow reforms, and that's general to men. Winiger would say that's general to men. We have blocks of what we do. We, as men, we never stick on one thing. We fix things and we move on. We fix things and we move on. We fix things and we move on. We do this in our life too as men. We take on a project. We even decide at a certain point whether the project is a failure or a success, and we move on. That's the whole process of group dynamics within business, and comes from small micro things within ourselves, which we do, and how it becomes easier to work in these situations when human nature is being followed. But with these things in Mgtow, I've noticed lately, instead of one solid group or groups with sub messages that promote the major group, we have groups with sub messages, or two other groups going after a group and trying to dissolve a group. And that's when it becomes that's when these things become detrimental to the group. There becomes this take no prisoner mindset, and there'll be no more middle of the road, or no more tolerance towards the out group, or whatever group has been deemed as the minority group. And that will come a lot on within Mgtow is popularism. Popularism is a common myth among people, that popularists are right. Popularists are not right. They're just popular. We see that a lot in modern politics too. Just because someone's popular doesn't mean they're right about their theories and analogies in economics and how to run a country. It just means they're popular. And ageism, and like I said, has a lot to do with that. And the how you present yourself as the enthusiastic salesman, some of your look, and that's where the POA comes in. Your look, you'll be popular for a short period of time until everybody figures out you have no idea what you're talking about. Uh, but this becomes a stepping stone and a path for institutionalized bullyingism. And then what happens is it fizzles out, it splinters, and another person becomes dominant. And that's what we're talking about, Karpo's triangle and group dynamics in general sense. If you can think about these two things in the same thing, you'll have splintering, you have fizzling out, and we lose members, and that's where we're lacking right now. One member will say it's triumph or take on a triumph or a majority will over the other, and then it begins again. But it always does one thing: if you don't cure it, this kind of group dynamics becomes groupthink, and if you don't cure it when it happens, then it starts over in a recidivistic process and happens again and again. And I think we've noticed this over the years, especially I've noticed this over the years, because we thought we had it cured at one point, but we found out that with time we'll get new in-groups, and new in-groups of we'll bring on ageism, and ageism, and we'll bring on who's the purist and who's not the purist, and all that silly garbage of, and that's where it becomes social justice, and it becomes not a thing of science, which Mgtow's keep with these kind of overviews. When we do overviews of our group, we talk about in a scientific term, what would I do if I took on these things? How would I measure them? How would I take this thing in a scientific group? What would be the theoretical paradoxes in these? What's the absurdity in what had happened? And that's what I asked when I talk about absurdity. What I'm talking about is theoretical paradoxes that exist in the minority groups and the majority groups and subgroups. And I just call them subgroups. Theoretical paradoxes is what I look for. Well, what's happening when someone's saying something absurd, or I noticed this was one of the guys, very popularism had took over, and he was talking, I'm a monk, but I like to go pee on girls and rape, and it was just like, it was, a monk would, and things like paradoxically a monk would never do. And it became that, but that's popularism. That's why popularism is such a myth, and it's so cringy in the intergroups, in the interpersonal and intergroups, when the relationship within them, when you see that absurdity and it sticks in your face, and you go, oh my God, this is just some crazy garbage that I'm seeing. But the good news in this thing is groups often go through these things, and we have to look at the what is Mgtow and what is the MRA, and we're a group, and we're working towards storming something. We're going to storm something, and we're going to put our best effort into it, and we hope all the groups, and the extreme out groups, and the moderate out groups, and the other groups can all work together at the same time to do this thing. But we're so splintered right now that we're not getting nothing done, and we've always become inept to the point of 1970s, 60s men's rights group, and up into the 80s men's rights group and outright groups, which is probably what they wanted anyways. Mgtow became a very hello, Eric Wingard. I'm just doing an off the cuff explanation of what I see going on, and I know some of this language and everything that I use, and some of the theoretical practices and that I talk about is like a complete flyby on most Mgtows, and that's okay. You don't have to understand it. If you stay around here long enough, you'll read the correct information, and you will understand it. In maybe 20, 30 years, you go, oh shit, Joe was right. Because Joe's always right. So within Mgtow, we got this problem with horizontal. Yeah, Mgtow Alliance means, yeah. Yeah. So, so we see this problem within Mgtow, and I think it's a problem that needs to be dealt with. And I think men naturally kind of gravitate towards to to cures for these problems and putting away our biases towards out groups and everything. Eric's funny. Uh, yeah. So yeah. Ooh, that's the garbage truck coming around. I was wondering, what was that? Was that wind or everything? So I'm taking Dougie to the doctor today to see if he's going to be worthwhile to save and everything. But, so I had a little time to talk about one of the problems within Mgtows, and not that anybody's going to watch or not that anybody's going to listen. They're just it's going to have to, it's going to have to go through its cycle again before anybody kind of sees what's going on, and maybe we can catch it next time, or we can catch it after it causes all the damage that it's going to cause. And that's it. I've watched this over the years, and several incidences over the years within Mgtow, and it's become almost second nature for me to just kind of ignore it now and go, yeah, that's going to happen. We're going to see it again every year. We're going to have a certain influx. We're going to have a certain out group. We're going to have a certain group go after another group, and we can never kind of form this. What are we angling at? What are we going at? There's never a target point there's never a target for our arrows to surround or go towards, and we can never hit our mark if there isn't a target, and we're just blindly shooting arrows out into the woods with no intellectual or scientific theories about these things. And that's what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about a theory of horizontal hostilities within in-groups and group dynamics. And we see this, and once you kind of put this thing and you read about it a little, I think you can read about a half a page of any Berkeley study on it or anything, and then go, oh, I see where this comes into in Mgtow meets the Mgtow, and we see at the end, we often hear the joke, oh man, he just went on Mgtow, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about horizontal hostilities within a group that drove an in member to become an out member and leave Mgtow, and that's what we don't want. We want Mgtow to be a program of attraction where it comes in and men can experience being around men of their own situations, and talk and share stories and gain insight, and get a plan, whatever that plan is, and have a life plan for how to do your Mgtow with a life plan, and how you can be active in the MRA, or how you can be active in the community without hurting anybody else. And that's what we say. Mgtow is a program. We don't hurt anybody. We're not out to, if you just ignore us, we'll go away. And that's what we're saying. We'll go away on this thing, and we're just walking away from this thing. And there's no reason to be upset or angry about us, because I can't possibly influence your life. But what I'm doing on this thing is I'm putting up a hedge where you can't possibly influence my life. And if that's fair, and that's equality, and that's justice, you don't influence my life, I don't influence your life. That's justice, and that's what we strive for: justice of equality. And it's a perfect concept. Now, I talked about justice of equality and theoretical justice the other day. I used incel as the group. If you didn't catch what I was doing, I was using incel as the in-group. Now we're going to come out today, and we're going to finish this up with horizontal hostilities, which I wanted to talk about the in-groups and the out-groups, and what is an out-group in Mgtow, what is in-groups. And we in-groups is simple. We have our levels, and we measure ourselves by our levels, and whatever group you put in your level. And then the last level, I guess, would be monk, and there's a monk / celibacy, and from there is a MRAs that practice uh, risk analysis, and then for they put themselves in the best position, and with that comes the idea that we do not risk these things. There are some is the juice worth the squeeze in these situations. From there down, you probably have your level 3s and your level 2s that still desire dateable relationships and think that we're going to go back to the traditional, but we're really not. That's what you're working up through. You're working up kind of relieving yourself from the quagmire of terrible thinking of we're going to go back to that traditional, and you have that's a thing that, since it's what you're taught in life, we can hear from the inception that I've been lied to. Every Mgtow and every MRA and every PUA will come out with a, why did you come in there? What happened? What drove you into these sort of situations? And the response to that is, I've been lied to. Whatever I learned in school, whatever the father figures, whatever the mentors and the masculine figures have taught me. So we all have this in common. We were lied to on society. Society lies to us, accuse us down. Most of us find this out after our 20s, after we've mated. We date and we mate, and we have children, and then divorce comes, and it was like, that was it. That was why so I can be a slave at the end to these other people, that to some of them I made, or may have made, or may not have made, or she made them actually. And then I'm just this external father, which is a payor, or a payer, which is just basically a payer terminal, a payer. I'm an ATM to the world now. That's where you start thinking about your MRA and your Mgtow. And I was listening to the other day about who hurt you, the idea of who hurt you. That's a pejorative term now for to gain leverage in an argument. It's a pejorative term, and it really doesn't mean anything. But the question to that was, why are there millions and millions and millions of men asking the same question? I mean, it's not just who hurt you is a ridiculous statement. Why are there millions and millions of men that have the same stories now, that have the same results in courts? And why do millions and millions of men think the court doesn't work for them? Why do millions and millions of men even disregard what family courts would say and just go, screw you, I'll just leave? Why do we have expats? Why do we have going Galt people? They're saying, screw you, I'll just leave. There's no way I'm going to be a slave, and you can't explain that to me. There's no way, besides man up rules, that somehow I'm a better man if I do this, that you can explain this to me. So there's reasons why we come in here. I'm kind of long-winded on these things, because you have to be, because you can't just kind of leave people vacant on the ideologies of Mgtow. But when we get in here, what do we do? Well, that's the next question. What's the next step? We did this with Nico. We did this before with CS. We did this before even that with Barbarossa and blah blah blah, Barbarossa and Stardust. Everybody seems to get to this what next, and what's next, as I explained back then, is activism. That's the thing that we don't seem to have. And then we have out groups and in groups and those things too, which deny activism. And some Mgtows go, well, I'll get active. And you see this now again, a kind of push towards activism. And the Project Mayhem things, we went through this about 3, 4, 5 times in Mgtow with the Project Mayhems. We'll get out, and it always works out the same way. They always come up with the same ideas. We'll do pamphleteering. We'll get out into the public and do pamphleteering. And we'll get out into the public and we'll make stickers. We'll get off the Publix and we'll draw a little Mgtow on dollar bills. And when one comes back to you, you'll be like, ooh, how giddy. Like, ooh, look, Mgtow on a dollar bill. Oh, huh. And this kind of activism kind of falls short, because I know what the final, I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. And the horizontal hostilities build within the in groups. And this whole idea. It's baby steps activism, pamphleteering, and get out there. And the modern pamphleteering now is get out, make your website, and it always calls for this out group reaction to, I'm going to go Mgtow on Mgtow. Hence, I'm going to go start my own web page. I'm going to get my own server, and then hence we have out groups in that direction, which is good for the group, because that's actually the kind of thing that's supposed to have a norm. We form, we storm, we adjourn. That's the word I was looking for last time. And then we restart. We norm, we form, we storm, and we adjourn. We do this every year around here. And when we adjourn, we get severed subgroups that resemble Mgtow out in the vast manosphere, hoping that these are strong groups. But in that thing that happens, in this group dynamics that happens, there always has to be there always has to be the rebel. There always has to be the horizontal hostilities, and within there, and the main group never gets to actually enact what kind of activism they want to do. We never work as the total of the group. We never have that target. We never have that one function that we were supposed to do that year. If we had picked something, we'd have a one function. We would be single-mindedness in our pursuits to, that one function that we were aiming at, and we'd have more of an impact if all the groups would get together. And but that would call for some sort of leadership and some sort of guidance, which Mgtow is very adverse to. Any kind of leadership or guidance, Mgtow is very adverse to. I've tried to instruct, Mgtow in the ways in the past and everything, and it's just, man, Mgtow is so adverse to those ideas that they would cut their leg off to to avoid them, and hence hurt themselves. So we do have a major problem, and unlike any formations, now we can look at the formations of the groups that have gone through this and everything, and you can get history on those. We look at we can look at the feminism groups of the 1860s, 70s, 80s, up into suffrage and all of that. We look at the amazing personalities up to RadFem. I look at the 70s, 80s, and 90 model of the RadFems, the radical feminists, which is a horrible group of girls that were planning death to men and stuff like that. But if you watch that thing and how they severed from inside, and it was a very online sort of thing that happened too. There was the online social presence, and we can look at that, and was that actually cured, or did the group dissolve, or did the group become something else? What happened with that? And I would say that the group did dissolve because they never fixed their, which is a horrible and ominous sort of. It's a horrible and ominous sort of thing that you can look at. If you're comparing Mgtow to that, then you could say that, well, this is what is eventually going to happen. The group will dissolve eventually because of its hostility and biasness is in the internal group, and the horizontal hostility that does exist. And so I think it's an important subject for Mgtow, and no matter how you think about it, is whether you use the proper terminology, which a sociologist would understand, or you're using it in a vague sense of hey, we just got to all get along within. We don't all have to get along, but we all have to get along within the group, so the group can actually function as a group. We can put away our hostilities towards other men for short periods of time so we can achieve something. That's usually what men do in any sort of group, from welders to shipbuilders to warehouse workers to doctors and lawyers. They all put away their hostility towards the other men so they can work towards something. And that's something we don't talk about. We often talk about the horizontal hostility when it's in function, but we never talk about how men have the ability to start do things like this, to build buildings, and that's when men put away those indifferences, or they take on a structured program within there to deal with the differences, and that's how men get things done. So in that, I often hear the well, we're not a group, we're not a this, and that's the end. That's the disillusionment part. That's the I'm so apathetic about this at this point. I can say that when a person says that to me, it just says to me, you're getting ready to leave, and you're so apathetic about this program that, and you don't think there's no cure to it, that you're willing to just say no, 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 we don't have a structure. That's ridiculous, and we do have a structure, a very loosely fit structure, but as long as like men like me, myself, BGS, and the older Mgtows make kind of keep it together and waiting for the new Neo, the new binding factor, that inspirational person to come around and bind the groups together in a very large arrow and send it off into the world and split and fracture the world in that way. We're not gonna, we're just floundering around in here, and we're not really getting anything done. But that's where people like me have to think about these things, and whether you're thinking about it in a very unstructured way, we all think about these things in here, and we all think about it. And no matter what your thoughts are, it's important to the group, and you can air your thoughts like I do, and see how the group reacts to them. And that's all I wanted to talk about a little. I have to give Dougie a bath before he goes to the veterinarian to see if we have to euthanize him or fix him, one of the two. And that's what I'm doing today. And I just thought I'd make a quick video about horizontal hostilities within the group measures. You can go back and look at it and look about what I say and disagree with me or agree with me. But in the very, I am I am right about it. And that's about it. Hello, Misanthropic Zombie. Top of the morning to you all. I'm just getting ready to start my day. It's a late day, but I got some things to go do. I just thought I'd do a quick video about horizontal hostilities, and I was doing a sort of test on this thing too, to test something in the YouTube zone about how I form my language when I talk about these topics, and but that's all I got to say, and I hope you listen and go do your research on your own. That's the greatest part about Mgtow, is because once we kind of get interested in something, we do our research, and I don't want to tell anybody how to think about things and how to. Yeah, thanks, Wookiee Lives Matter. I don't want to tell anybody how to think about things. I want Mgtows to form their own opinions and start working towards their own reasonable ideology about the world. And but it always takes a spark. It always takes someone to kind of give you a new language and to go look at. So horizontal hostilities is one of the parts of social justice in the new language that I think we should look into and ask ourselves is are we experiencing these kind of fractures in group dynamics in Mgtow? And I think the answer is yes, but how do we fix them? And that's the bigger thing. That's left to bigger men. That's left to smarter men. And that would call for measures that basically I don't think Mgtows want to do. But at a certain point, if we want to achieve anything, or it's just going to be the floundering fish on the shore. As before us, the 40 years of inept male activism that got nothing done and actually made things worse. Mgtow is the cure, and One of the things that I do is being tolerant now has become my battle cry. If you be quite tolerant within Mgtow, and everybody forms their spot, and that's what I say at the end of every one of my videos. Now it's up to each and every person in Mgtow to form their spot and do what they're supposed to do, and do their little piece, and that's about it. Hoka was here. Yeah, we got that little guy with the with the draw the line and the nose sticking over. Hoka was here. that's uh that's Kilroy. Kilroy. Very interesting story behind Kilroy. I think I can't remember his name. John Kilroy. John Kilroy is a shipbuilder in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, and he used to have to crawl down into the holes, and he'd put the Kilroy was here after he inspected the structure of the metal and the rivets in the metal, and he got but there was but there was spies that would get in there. They raced. They wanted the ships to be built terribly, so a Kilroy would crawl down into those structures again, and he'd rewrite them in different ways. Kilroy, and then that sort of when the ships went out to the battle and the armor stuff and everything, they always seemed like Kilroy was here. He expected it, and that gave him a sense of of you know like, this ship's not going to fall apart. I'm confident that the ship's not going to fall apart because of Kilroy was there, and they took that over to it became a first meme. That was the first meme, and they got the little guy with hanging over the fence, with the nose sticking out, lurking, going, Kilroy was here. So it's interesting how these things. Australians had Foo was here too, and that's interesting. If you ever look that stuff up, you can read about that stuff. That's great stuff. The Mgtow is the Übermensch. Yes, we are the supermen of this world, and like Supermen, we have a superhuman feat to do, and we'll do that feat. We're gonna put this thing back together, and right about we're men. That's what we do. We're structured to fix things. We are the maintenance men of this world. We build things, and we fix them, and we keep this planet going. Otherwise, millions and billions of people would die, and it would be horrible. And but Mgtow's got their job in this world. We are the Übermensch. We are that thing. We're no longer carrying our master's packs. We're no longer the slave. We're the builders. And with that, I just wanted to say thanks. I got things to do. Like I said, I got to give Dougie a bath before he goes to. He's gonna hate that. He's gonna hate that. He's hiding under the bed right now because I think he can sense there's something different happening here, and there's a bath coming, and he doesn't, even though he's blind as a bat and weak, he still doesn't want to take a bath. Mgtow is Overmunch means self-made superhumans. Yes. You could look at that from Jung's theory to Jung had the Übermensch, and Nietzsche had the Übermensch, and Hobbes had the Übermensch, and a couple of it. I think Adler had the Übermensch too, and they talked about it in similar but other ways. And it's interesting philosophies that they have. But today I wanted to just talk and just kind of hit on the subject of horizontal hostilities and in-group preferences and in-group by groups and whatever subgroups, and instead of getting together and focusing on one target, we're kind of fracturing, and you get the two groups against one group and the one group against the other group, and we have minority groups doing that. We don't want to do that because we are not women. And but that's what I noticed the effemination of men. They'll start acting like women in those characteristics instead of acting like men and saying, hey, we have to have a council meeting here and take care of some of these problems. They start acting like women, and you can look at it in the nursing and the female rad femme groups and everything, and say this will be the result unless we start acting like men. And that's what I'm telling them now. grow up and start acting like men. We need to have a council here and get together and talk about what we're all about and where we're going, or else this thing is going to dissolve. And that's it today. That's it today. And that's all I wanted to say. That's the message I want to put out to the Mgtow community. You know, do it. Start acting like men instead of little girls, and or it's going to dissolve. And maybe that's what they want. And I think it's obvious. Some of the leaders in Mgtow that you know, the whatever you perceive as leaders have to get together and talk about this and do it, or else the same thing will happen. But then again, I'm going to be around, and most of the guys that have stuck around for 20, 30 years here, they're going to stick around until the very end, and hopefully there'll be people that'll stick around and try to drive this men's rights movement forward. And that's it today, guys. That's all I got for you, and I'm going to go do my things. And like always, thanks a lot for being Mgtow. Mgtow.